So my name is Sherry Naudine. I'm actually the owner of Collegiate Sports Advocate based here in Dallas, Texas. However, we have close to 1,200 student athletes nationwide, and we have 7 advocates that support our student athletes nationwide. And as of today, we have 500 and, oh, I even have to look at my list. We have 564 committed student athletes. So I always give a little plug that we're like no other out here, that what we do is very hands-on. We stay with them until they graduate college. And our goal is to make relationships and feed as much information to the listening audience as possible. So again, I'm Sherry Naudine, owner of Collegiate Sports Advocate. And oh, Christy just reminded me there. On the very bottom, you'll see a little heart with a plus, and you can give little hands up, thumbs up, hearts, or 100%. And then Margot did a great job of retweeting the space as you come on and let people know we're on here. So this is something we enjoy doing and love to educate you guys. So I'm going to pass the mic to the 4 speakers we have tonight. One of our speakers was unable to be on here tonight, so we will miss her. But I'm going to start with you, Anthony. If you can give us your background and your success, and tell us about your role as a pitching coach.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Appreciate you having me on. I am Anthony Aresco. I'm currently in my 3rd year at Lamar University, currently as the associate head coach and recruiting coordinator, but specializing in pitching and catching. So that's where I'm at now. Started in men's fast pitch, was learning to pitch as a teenager. I got tipped off that you could get some opportunity in the college game as a student manager. So I went and did that for Mike White at the University of Oregon while I got my undergrad. Graduated there, G8 at Ole Miss for Mike Smith, and worked with Ashley Chastain and the pitching staff there, and then followed her over to Charlotte for a couple of years before landing here at Lamar. So it's been really exciting to get hands-on with the pitching staff of my own and learn a lot along the way. And just happy to be on here and get to share some ideas and hear these other guys talk about their perspective on things. It'd be really exciting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anthony. And he and I've forged quite a nice friendship. My daughters tease me that he's my other son. So no partialness there, but Anthony and I do a lot of sharing about.
Hey, Ms. Sherry, thank you for having me on
Hi,
this
Justin.
evening. My name is Justin Robischaux. I'm the associate head coach for the University of Louisiana, specializing on the pitching side, like Anthony as well. Unlike Anthony, I come from the baseball world. My background's a little bit different with regard to what's in the world of softball today. I've had a short stint in professional baseball, opened up a training facility, and had the opportunity to start working with young women. And then Jerry Glasgow, had a conversation with him along the way, and me and him interconnected, and 3 years later, here I am. So it's an honor and privilege to be here, and looking forward to hearing different thoughts and ideas.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. And Christian, welcome.
Hi, Sherry. I just wanted to give a little brief background. I actually was a student manager with Anthony, so that's how we know each other. Kind of did a little bit of the men's fast pitch side, but we were managers up at Oregon. I was there under Mike White and Coach Lombardi, so kind of got both of those. And then after that, was a volunteer coach over at Florida State. Worked with Lonnie there, kind of learned more of the metric side of softball with pitching there. And then was at LMU for 3 seasons, won a couple conference championships there out in California. And then now I'm most recently the pitching coach at Arizona. And this is my first year here. So excited to speak here.
Fantastic. Thank you, coaches. And then Coach Margot, she is our only non-college coach, but so much wealth of information and a dear, dear friend. So Margot, come on board.
Hey guys, I am Margot. I actually pitched in college, and I definitely have evolved my pitching techniques and all that kind of stuff throughout the years, but I am excited to hear from these guys and see what they're doing on the collegiate level and see how we can implement it on the high school and youth level. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And yes, Margot is a high school coach in the Houston area, So, and a big TikToker. If you don't follow her, she's got a lot of content out there. So, I labeled it "Let's Talk Pitching." But again, if you guys are listening, give us a reshare. Let people know we're out here because we are starting it again. And then, if for some reason you don't hear the speakers speak, sometimes there's little glitches with Twitter. Sometimes you just have to hang up and dial back in. So, if you see us speaking underneath our name, but you're not hearing it audibly, that's what the issue is. So the very first question, and I'm just going to go around robin in the order that you guys introduced yourself in, is what's happening in pitching in college today? And I know that's a very general question. So Anthony, I'll let you lead the way.
Okay, yeah, like you said, there's a lot to go into with that. I think there's so many things, evolving in our game, season to season, year to year, as we get more, different minds, different perspectives, and just more research done on our sport and everything. But I think, one of the biggest trends right now is just getting away from trying to carry one arm through your entire season. We're kind of getting past the days of having that horse pitcher that's going to give you 300 innings. It's going to go and carry a staff and do that. You're seeing, more and more programs figuring out ways to utilize multiple pitchers and have 3, 4, 5 arms that are contributing on a regular basis. And I think, everyone's finding different ways to do that, whether you're splitting games and finding matchups within a 7 inning game, or whether you're trying to vary looks from game to game within a series. Really complex in the preseason when you're getting 4, 5, 6 games in a 3-day span against multiple opponents. So I think that's something that is definitely trending right now, is figuring out how to utilize a staff and find different pieces that complement each other and do different things well, which is really exciting. And the other piece is just that I'll touch on is just the technology piece. I think that's been a huge benefit for our program in particular this year, is being allowed to have the digital pitch calling software that we can kind of relay that in and get away from some of the coded number systems that we used before. It's definitely helped the pace of play, and we have a couple pitchers that it's definitely helped their rhythm, their tempo, their pace of working pitch to pitch, and they've benefited a lot from that. So very broad question there. A couple of the first things that came to mind. I'm sure there's plenty more happening right
Fantastic.
now as well.
Great. And so Justin, we'll have you add on to that, and Christian, you're next,
Yeah,
and then
I'm
Marco.
assuming, Ms. Sherry, I think I'm having a tough time. I didn't hear a question, but through Anthony, I'm assuming the question was revolving around staff implementation and where that trend's going. Typically, from what I've seen since I've been in the sport, I guess softball has a history of following the game of baseball, and you'll see the technology piece kind of implemented in the game of baseball I would say about 10 years ago, and through companies like Yakertech and Rapsodo, the information and the data that's starting to populate in the game, it's nothing more than, I guess, a glorified radar gun at the end of the day. But on the staff implementation piece, what I think you're starting to see is lefty-righty splits. Those things are starting to become a thing, and the ability to kind of hone in on a roster. And just this past Sunday, we did something interesting. Coach Glasgow is a kind of a mad scientist / genius when it comes to managing a roster. We had our starting pitcher position in right field, or our starting position in the seven spot in the order, and our reliever in right field, and we're able to allow Chloe to face the lefties and Sam to face the righties, and they just kind of piggybacked off each other throughout the game. I also think that there's a lot of volume of play, more than there ever has been in the youth application of the sport. So I think the amount of innings that are that they're throwing are higher than they've been 5-10 years ago. So I think by the time they get to college, you're seeing a lot more staff utilization due to that inning and that volume count so up. And with the things like synergy and different technology pieces, it just allows you to add more detail into the game. And I agree with Anthony, man. The technology piece on the pitch calling side is a lifesaver. It's so much better than those cards. So that's kind of my 2 cents on what I'm assuming the question is.
Christian, what's your follow-up there?
Yeah, I think a couple major things that have been showing up in softball, especially with pitching right now, is just focus on just technology, kind of like everyone's talked about. Just I think the inclusion of synergy across the board has been a great equalizer for a lot of people, just because there are certain teams that we might not be able to find film on, or there might be certain pitchers that there might only be a couple games, maybe like on YouTube, just depending on your accessibility when it comes to film. It's become a huge advantage for a lot of teams. That's why you're starting to see mid majors be able to compete at a higher level, and even across the board when it comes to power fives, you're seeing some more quote unquote upsets. But I think that's a direct correlation to people's ability to prep better for pitchers. And so I think the next step is, how do we figure out how to respond to that? How do we figure out, how to use the video to benefit from the pitching side, not just from a hitting side? So I think, there's kind of that ebb and flow with it, and just trying to see where we go with that. I think when it comes to the development side of pitching, that there is a huge benefit of the Acrotech and Rapsodo that we're talking about, of just being able to see kind of what exactly our pitchers are able to do and what they can compete with and what their stuff looks like. But I think what's also really cool is we're starting to see that on a youth level too. Like, I'm able to talk to potential recruits, PSAs, even kids that we've committed to us. Like, we're all able to speak the same language earlier and faster, and so we're able to grow more and learn quicker once they get to college. So I think that's something that's been really exciting to see. But I think the biggest thing right now is just being able to manage a larger pitching staff. What does that look like? We can't just have two arms go back and forth, because we see that that's not going to be able to be long lasting through a season, just one arm care, but two, just overexposing them. But I think just also keeping pitchers happy, and also helping them mentally be ready for those moments. I know it's easy to just put someone in there for closing role for 3 outs, 6 outs, but then to mentally get them prepped and ready for that moment too is a whole nother battle. So trying to play that game with it too, and then just trying to help them get the best out of their stuff, basically.
Absolutely. And Margot?
Well, a couple of things that I see is like they look a lot more athletic to me than they have in the past, like pitchers in general. They look like they're in a lot better shape, and maybe it is the more pressure, and they know they have to last longer. Do make the most out of their time on the mound. But I also think that Jamie Southern posted this thing, and it had all the OU pitching broken down, and there is like maybe 2 or 3 that are getting 20 plus innings, and the rest of them are just like trickling down. So I can imagine the mental stress that has on those pitchers, one, and two, like just being on a short leash, that puts a lot of extra pressure. So like he was talking about, the mental game is probably magnified times 10 now for those pitchers.
Yeah, and Justin, I want to make sure you can hear me now, because I know we had a little technical difficulty. So I don't know if you can click that little heart down there and give me a little emoji, so that you can say you see me. Awesome. All right. So you actually hit on the next question. My next question was going to be, is there any pitfalls? And I think Justin kind of brought it up a little bit, and so did Christian. And it's really some more of the questions here is the overuse, the injuries, the facing 7 innings. And when do these student athletes ever get to pitch 7 innings other than in high school, and then challenged against the elite level of batter that they're going to face in college? So Anthony, I'd love for you to take that any direction you want, because that's a loaded question.
Yeah, the overuse situation is definitely a growing factor that we're seeing from, you deal with your high school season, then you go straight into your travel season, and as an incoming freshman, you go straight into fall your freshman year, trying to prove you're a hard worker, trying to get caught up to the way we do things, at whatever institution players end up at. So it's definitely a challenge to deal with just managing workloads. And I think there's, a mindset with a lot of young players, a lot of young pitchers that, more is always better. And when you're younger, especially, they get into, well, it's a natural motion and you can throw and throw and throw. And, the more we research the game and get some background in it, the more we're realizing that that's not true. And that, we do see overuse injuries, stress fractures, muscular injuries, elbow injuries, a lot of the same stuff that we saw in baseball. Like Justin said, realizing this stuff maybe 5 or 10 years later in our sport than we were in baseball, just from lack of research, lack of education on it. So with our pitchers that come in, not all of them, but a lot of pitchers, I feel like we have a little bit of a learning curve of, hey, more isn't always better, right? We need to figure out how to train and work efficiently, and have a lot of attention to detail at our lower intensity stuff or our shorter distance stuff or some drill stuff to get a lot more out of that, where we're not getting on the mound and throwing pitches for 60, 75, 90 minutes a day on any given day, or especially on consecutive days as well. So I feel like there's a cultural shift of, okay, it's not going how I want. How do I get better without just completely burning myself out physically? And the technology, like these guys have talked about, has been a huge part of that, of us being able to be a lot more efficient in making adjustments in the bullpen because we have more information to go off of. And then having access to synergy and all kinds of video to go back and watch game film, not just from college, but now some of that stuff's getting integrated even in the travel ball world to be able to go back and see what's real and what's not, and what's different and what's the same, and try to work a little bit smarter and not just go all at it full speed all the time, doing all of that stuff. So I think that's a huge factor, is just kids feeling like they need to do so much in the bullpen. And no, it's not. We throw a lot here. I'm not saying that we don't, but there's so many other things that we can do to grow as pitchers and grow as athletes that aren't throwing a ball as hard as we can underhand from 43 feet all the time. So that's definitely what immediately comes to mind based off what you're saying there. One of the pitfalls for sure is just how much these kids throw to get to this point, and then they get here and they still have to get better. And the way to take that next step might not be the same process that got them to the point to get them here. So that's definitely something that we have to work through on the mental side of things, to help get the most out of our student athletes once we have them.
Justin?
Yeah, just as much as the data with spin rate and velocity is, I think is the big selling point that a lot of people get enamored with. The overuse side of things, just as much as you have the ability to collect the data and those things, that we utilize a company called Armored Heat, and the prehabilitation side, we call it the prehab side. And what I stress to them most of the time is, we want to make sure we maximize the prehab so we never have to enter in a rehab stage. And getting them to understand that we have, everybody's different. We have 5 girls on our staff. They all have different body types. They all think differently. And so, one of the things that I take pride in what we do there is I don't really cookie cut anybody. It's an individualistic approach. I think each and every girl has a different movement pattern as well. And we also utilize a company called Fusionetics to kind of take a look at what their rotational measurements are, to be able to kind of maximize the health from a neuromuscular standpoint, because I feel that's the most crucial thing. And like Anthony said, there's a lot more things you can do now, when it comes to shorten the workload while increasing the reps, but lowering the volume, with maybe increasing them putting them under a little bit more duress. Things like activating their nervous system. Um, I think the athlete today, with the mental side of the game, the way it is, being it's a failure-driven sport, we spend a lot of time in the classroom as well, trying to get them to understand, at failure at the end of the day really doesn't define you. It's an opportunity to kind of respond, and getting them to kind of embrace the opportunity and embrace the lonely space in the world at times is that mound, and it's sometimes the best place in the world at times is that mound. But when it's the lonely place, how do we reset? How do we go back to zero? Being able to mentally reset is kind of the theme of this fall, and giving them the tools to do so. And people like Brian Kane, he's really elite in his field. He's one of the top sports psychologists around, and utilizing the technology pieces that are out there that kind of give you information on who your athlete is, and taking care of their body, I think, is the crucial part once they get to us. Just because they've thrown so much by the time that they get there. And one of the points Anthony said was, sometimes they think, I got to do, and a lot of times less is more. I agree with what he's saying. We do throw a lot at our program, but I think there's a hidden value in getting them to understand that their body is, without their ability to perform and move efficiently and take care of the other things that are needed to throw a softball, at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to go out there and perform.
Christian, you're up.
Yeah, I think some of the big things that we focus on is we really go hard in the fall in our off season. So we really work on building mechanics and fleshing a lot of things out then. That way, whenever we get to the spring, it's just more of a trust your training mindset. That way we're not, our big thing is we say don't overcook the sauce, so we understand that we're throwing a lot on the weekends, so we're trying to save our bullets for the weekend. So we're not trying to throw 45-minute bullpens every single day. We're doing spin days. We're doing very late days, maybe doing more film based stuff. But we try to be able to focus more on like how can we do like a proper build up in the preseason. That way we're in shape, ready to go for like a 7-inning game. So one thing that really stuck with me was when I was at my former school, I kind of talked to our baseball pitching coach, which maybe Justin can even work on, say some stuff about this. But we talked kind of more of like how your kids that are maybe 2-3 inning max kind of kids, you get them out on the mound more often within shorter spurts, like almost like sprinter training, like runners, versus your 7-inning kids or your true starters. You might work them more of like a cross country based, marathon training, where it's like some days you will have long bullpens of up to 60-70 pitches, whereas some days maybe just 20. So I think just being able to understand, what type of pitchers are you going to be expecting, kind of suggested pitch counts for, and then just training them to be able to get into shape for that. So I think that's something that we've adopted and we've seen some success with that.
Love it. So much detail, so much more growth than the last time we talked about pitching. It's crazy how much it changes. Margot, love to hear from you.
Having those resources is so amazing. It's not like it's nice to hear that you'll have those things, but it's not like every program does. And I feel like when you are a high school pitcher going into college, there is so much of a learning curve to learn that your curveball in high school might have been great, but it's not going to cut it. And like you said, just training a little bit differently. I think it's like a humbling experience for any high school kid to go to a college setting and to have to kind of like relearn what they thought they already knew. But it is a positive that they're having so many other pitchers on staff where they're not being thrown into the fire immediately, that they can, have that time to learn. But I would say the hardest part probably for those pitchers, even though they've had all that experience, is the learning curve of getting on that mound and facing those 22-year-old girls that they're probably not ready for at 18.
Love it. And you actually brought up a very next question. It leads right into it is,
I'm on
are
fire
there,
right now.
oh,
I'm just
you
bringing up all the
are.
questions.
You are. You just lead me right into the next thing, and I didn't even send you an agenda because I just wrote it. The thing that is leading right into is, what are the tips for this, group of prospective athletes? Margot mentioned that they don't have those resources. They don't have these machines, which are just amazing. I've heard names today I haven't heard. One I hear a lot in the travel ball sector is Rapsodo. Are there things and places that they can go to get engaged with these without having to buy into the major technology, or are there types of tips of things that they can do differently? Anthony?
Yeah, I think, regardless of what you have access to technology-wise and resource-wise, I think as a younger, PSA trying to figure out how to get recruited and get to the college level, I think a lot of kids get caught up in wanting to do everything and be everything. And you start trying to level up too fast and you never really secure a very solid foundation. So personally, I'd rather a kid that has one hard pitch they can throw to either side of the plate and maybe a changeup than the drop, rise, curve, screw, change kid. But half the days the rise goes down and half the days the drop goes up because we just want to make sure we have 5 or 6 or 7 pitches. So, we have two of our top arms right now. They essentially throw 2 hard pitches and a changeup, and one of those hard pitches is a fastball. And that's not saying Lamar's winning the World Series this year or anything, but that's a pretty good indication of some of this does happen at the college level. So, I think especially in the winter months after you get done with your fall season of travel ball, you've got that little gap before high school ball really heats up. How do we make our best pitch better? How do we replicate our delivery a little bit better and get a little bit better at some of the details of what we already do, rather than going and being in a big hurry to add a bunch of other layers to our game? I think building a really strong foundation is super important, and that's a huge piece that can help. And in terms of getting access to some of those things, no specific places come to mind, at least in our area, but I know more academies and more facilities are investing and figuring out how they can get, whether it's a Yacker Tech or a Rapsodo or a Hit Tracks or some of this technology that student athletes can have access to on their own. And that may be the kind of thing that you try to find a way to go do it, maybe once a month or maybe once every couple months. If, obviously money and time are finite resources for a lot of families. So just getting some ideas of, where we're at, are we progressing? But those individual sessions, those are also just a snapshot in time. So, we have Rapsodo and we track our campers that come to camp on some of that stuff, but that is just a snapshot in time. So if you feel like, oh, that wasn't my best curveball day and the numbers really weren't very good, well, maybe don't worry about those numbers because that wasn't your very best. What we're able to really benefit from our level is we're able to collect data, especially like Christian was saying in our off season in the fall, on a regular basis and get a really good idea of what that pitch is most often and maybe what that pitch is capable of being if we can make some adjustments and find a little bit more consistency in certain things. But I just think less is more, and if we can do 1 or 2 or 3 things really, really well, that's going to give us a lot more consistent success than having 8 things and hoping that 2 or 3 of them work on any given day.
Justin.
Yeah, I think the Rapsodo and the Acrotech and all that stuff. I think it has its place and its value, but you almost have to be careful with that, especially at a young age, because it's one thing to throw on it and see it, and it's another thing for somebody to kind of teach you and explain it in a way of what is an axis, what is spin, what is true spin, and all the other stuff that comes with it. And I look at it like at the end of the day, it's a radar gun. It just gives you a little bit more detailed information than just a number of 66, 67. It's giving you a lot more of what that 66, 67 is actually doing. So our personal belief in what we do is that execution, I think, at the end of the day is going to be king. And your ability to command what you're doing will always, at the end of the day, I think, trump what good is it if I can spin it through the roof and throw it at 70 if I can't locate it. So I guess the process on our end when it comes to the data is it's great information. It's good for sources of development because it kind of sets the barometer of, hey, here's where you're at. Like Anthony was saying in the fall, here's where you're at in the spring. We can tell like the spin's picking up and maybe the spin orientation of the curveball is getting a little bit more truer and it's getting better, et cetera. So it lets them know from a development standpoint that they're improving. And I think as facilities start to move forward in this, I think it'll be, especially Rapsodo, will be like a common theme in there. But I do think that people need to kind of be careful with that stuff because you can definitely go down a rabbit hole where you'll get to a point of worrying about things that you really have no control over. It's just who you are that day. And so we kind of use it as a development piece. And that would be my advice for any young developing prospect out there, is to kind of use it to kind of identify where you are and check in on a regular basis to kind of see if you're improving and where your stuff is continuing to grow.
Love it. How about some follow-up there, Christian?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the technology really speaks to me, so I really enjoy it. I really enjoy how it can function in the bullpen, especially with the development with our pitchers. But I think at a younger level, there are some opportunities to be able to get tested on Rapsodo. I know Margot actually down in Houston, one of my friends, Kendra Pate, she actually has a Rapsodo machine down there that she uses. So I know there are some like high school kids that are able to get to them. I know people like Nate Walker, who works a little more in the private sector. He works with some recruiting stuff, but I know he goes out there and tests a lot. But I think there are some opportunities for data to be collected at a younger level and for them to learn how to read these numbers and how to grow from them. I do want to just reiterate, like just because you test at our university doesn't mean that we're going to hold those numbers to your inherent value, because it's not lost on me that y'all go to 20 camps in the off season and get your throw your arms off. So maybe your velo might be down when you come to Tucson, and that's okay. But it just gives us a better understanding of kind of where we're meeting you. Kind of gives us an understanding of what your strengths are, what we can work with and develop with you as a pitcher. Because there have been, national champion Olympians that have famously tested really poorly on the Rapsodo. So again, just because the data doesn't like you per se doesn't mean that you can't be successful at pitching. It's just a matter of, I like to use the data more of a how can we work with you and how can we improve your stuff. So I think exactly what Justin and Anthony were saying is it doesn't matter if you have a +7 rise ball. If you can't execute and throw in the zone, it doesn't really matter. So I would just reiterate to them, like, just because we're using the data to, improve your stuff, it doesn't mean that we can't also work on executing pitches and be able to throw to different parts of the zone. Because I think that's just as important too in their development at a young age. But I mean, I am enjoying where the technology is going, and it is pretty cool to see pitching coaches across the country start to be able to invest in it too at a younger level. But it's not lost to me the expense that comes with it as well.
Fantastic. Margot, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's just a tool. And at the end of the day, like, it's so amazing if you can spin the ball that much or throw that hard, but what does it matter if they're not swinging at it? 1 second.
Sounds like Margot has some family there. I'll go ahead and jump in here. So interesting. While we get this little break here, if you guys don't mind, again, shouting out to your friends, and then at the end of this, go ahead and share it, because it really gets a life on its own. And you can go back to our collegiatesportsadvocate.com page and look under media, and we've got 2 years worth of topics. And if there's one that you're going to want to hear in the future, definitely let us know. But right now, you can also use our messenger here for myself, and give us any questions that you have, because I've got just one more question that might lead into more, but I would love to hear what our listening audience is wanting to hear. So, Anthony, the next question is going to be, is there a particular style or techniques that are being used that you tend to like more, or maybe choose to not recruit? You've got all kinds of, and the reason I brought so many men pitching coaches on here right now is because of that new leap, and that was very, very common on the men's side. And I don't know if I'm using the wrong technology name for the leap, but you're seeing some kids really take on this powerhouse mechanics and some of this real aggressive driving out off of the mound. So I'll let you guys speak the language to it, but is there a style you like or don't like, or a pitfall or something that you might say to this student athletes, to maybe stay away from something that's catchy or cute that's not as effective in college?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the longer I've done this, the less I feel like has become non-negotiable. Early on, I would have absolutely said, yes, I want X, Y, and Z. If you don't do those things, I don't have interest in you. The more you do this, the more different kinds of body types and movements and patterns and styles you see have success. So for me, if you do something that's really elite and it doesn't quite look clean, but it's really elite, you command it and execute it, we're going to go ahead and take a shot on that, and see how that works. So, personally, I've always thought that from a foundation standpoint, it should be pretty efficient, pretty repeatable, cleaner mechanically, so we can build around it. And if it's not, that's okay if we have something that's like a plus pitch that plays right this minute. So just on a general sense, I feel like everything is all relative. The better you do one thing, the more we're willing to maybe work with in some other areas in whatever part of the game that is, even if that's position players, right? The better you hit, the more we might be willing to take on a project defensively, different kinds of things like that. So, that's kind of where my mind immediately goes on it, is just, whatever you do, kind of doing it super, super well. Personally, I'm a little bit more partial, and I think this is from the men's side a little bit, that I'm a little bit more partial to pitchers that pitch north and south. I'd prefer more drop rise as opposed to kids that are more curve screw. I just feel like at our level, it's easier to miss barrels and miss bats working north and south, and you've got hitters that have a bit more adjustability to different locations when you're throwing on one plane. So being able to change planes vertically does a lot for us, from strategic pitch calling and how we're mixing and matching a staff. Now, it's not to say we never recruit a curve screw kid, like plus stuff from a movement standpoint is just that, and plus velo, same difference, right? If we do something super, super well, we're going to go and take a shot on it. So that would be one of my preferences. If all other things are equal, is I'd rather have a kid that's going to be able to change eye level north and south than try to work east and west, where getting to college, the strike zone does shrink a little bit as opposed to travel ball on the edges where you're not quite getting the river onto the chalk like you may be accustomed to at a younger age. So those are some preferences on me that I think speak to style. But getting specifically to the question about the leaping situation and the recent rule change with that, we've been a little bit cautious on it so far. We haven't changed any of our current pitchers to try to do something like that. I think it's a situation where if you have a kid that naturally does something, it's not as much of a red flag from a recruiting standpoint. But personally, I'd like to see where things go a bit longer before I dive all in on it personally. The rules written in a way that leave some interpretation up to the umpires, and I'd like to see over the next year, 2, 3 years, how is this rule being called and enforced, and are there reactive changes to the rule once we see how it's starting to play out? So I'd just be cautious about diving all the way in on something because somebody interprets it a certain way. Because ultimately, the only interpretation that's going to matter is the 2 or 3 man umpire crew you have on a given day. So, I do personally crow hop and leap and all that when I pitch, but I also don't believe that's what's best for everybody. There's a lot more moving parts in that, and it can be more difficult to repeat at times. So I would just go with do what feels best and what's natural for you. And yes, that might be popular in certain circles right now, and it may be a great thing in 4, 5, 6 years. I don't think it hurts the game at all. But until there's some clarity on how that's getting enforced at the college level, I'm not trying to go and really force that onto pitchers. But again, if one were doing that well, it definitely wouldn't turn us away either. So
Gotcha.
kind of a pretty tried to stay in between on that answer because we'll see.
Lots to think about. Justin, what's your thought?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it earlier about, I guess, more or less like the cookie cutting, et cetera. When I'm looking at something, you're trying to project out, who is she going to be in the next 2 years? Who is she going to be, in a strength training program? Who is she going to be when you have a lot of one-on-one time? And some of the questions that I ask myself is, what is the feel? What is her feel to be able to change speeds? What is her feel to do different things? Can she move the softball? Can she not move the softball? Etc. When it comes to delivery and those things, I'm like Anthony. I'm cautious when it comes to changing, completely changing some things. And since I've been there, there's probably 1 or 2 instances where we had to make some adjustments and some changes to get some results that she was wanting to get. I guess my advice on that is, does it add value to you? And then if it does add value to you, what sacrifice is it coming after? Because usually if you're chasing after something, it's usually going to come at a sacrifice of something. And if it comes at the expense of timing and tempo and your ability to feel and do some things that you already were capable of doing the way you were, maybe it's not worth changing. So my thoughts on the delivery is, at the end of the day, I think every Division I athlete has a premium feature in what they do, and what is the projectability off that? How well can they move in space? How well can they move from point A to point B, and kind of projecting out on that to seeing, what is it going to look like down the road? And, my I guess my big thing that I'm trying to reiterate to them day in and day out is, understand what got you here, understand what you're really good at, understand what your neutral is, understand what your foundation is, and then we usually work off of that to move forward. So that's kind of my own take on that, and I hope I answered your question.
Love it. Great details, lots of information. And Christian?
Yeah, I'd say some of the big things that I look for in mechanics are just repeatability. I think that's a huge one. Like if you were to throw 10 drop balls, do your mechanics look the same on all 10? Or are you just trying to throw as hard as you can and maybe foregoing some of the proper mechanics? Because I think if you're not able to start there, I think it's really hard for you to be able to transition to other pitches and be able to graduate. But I think repeatability is a huge one. I think you have to have a change up at this level in order to be able to compete. And I think being able to come to campus and work with us is pretty important because just because you might be maybe say like a drop ball pitcher, but if you come to camp and then we work together and it's like, oh, now you do have the ability to throw a rise, you just haven't been able to yet. Like that's more intriguing to see, like kind of what Justin was saying of like what you can project out to potentially versus just going based off truly what we can only see when you play your travel ball games, because we never really know like what are you working on, how does your brain work until you're on campus. So but we can't really do that until you come to a camp. So I think that's a big thing. I think being able to get engaged with their pitching coaches, kind of see how they work, how they function, are they coachable. I think that's a huge piece of it that we kind of overlook, but like because I know it looks great when the kid throws 70, but if the kid throws 70 and doesn't listen, that's going to be hard to live with for 4 years. But I think coachability is a big thing on top of being able to just, I'd say my top priority is be able to, throw with command and be able to replicate the same pitch over and over again. But I'd say just when it comes to the leaping, we haven't really overemphasized it. We have a kid that does naturally crow hop. She actually worked on trying to stay on the ground prior to the rule. So now it's just kind of freed her up a little bit, but it's nothing like sometimes I forget that she does it. It's nothing that we really work on or focus on, but it's just something that she just naturally does.
Well, and I love how you snuck the campy in there, Christian. Which I do think if you've really locked in and you really want to be in front of a particular program and you are a pitcher, I think 100% you should get in front of these coaches because that's the best way to learn from them and to interact to see if it's going to be a fit on either side. So, Margot, take it from here.
It is so nice to hear these college coaches basically say like they're not going to treat you the same as everybody else. Like they know that you have, something to bring to the table, and that's why they're recruiting you, which you don't hear a lot from college coaches. So I think that's really nice to hear. But I also think like, why would you want to totally reinvent your whole motion and only have 4 years to one master it, then do well, and then try to succeed on that like highest level that you could possibly play at other than, pro after, I guess. But I would say it would be if you didn't do it and then you would have to implement it, I think it would be a lot harder than beneficial. And you'd have to just weigh out your risk versus reward. And some people, it might come super easy to, implement that and throw harder. But at the end of the day, they recruited you there for a reason, the way that you pitched, before they met you. So I think more of like melding with your team and your coaching staff and learning how they coach and what they want out of you and what your role is, maybe by season, by game, by weekend, whatever series. That's going to be probably the most important learning curve to take as a freshman, sophomore, and going into like those key roles that you should have on the mound.
You are so good, Margot. So while I frame up this last question, we do want to hear from you guys. If you have any questions, you came on here to get something specific that you want to hear from these coaches on, this is your opportunity. You can just message us there on the Twitter space. And I'm going to ask for the last kind of closing questions from Anthony and Coach Christian and Justin and Margot, which is there one tip or two tips of how to avoid injuries And is there one most valuable piece of information as a prospective student athlete, being a pitcher, that you want them to take away?
Yeah, I mean, there is so much in terms of injury prevention and prehab, like Justin was saying, and different things that, you know, we take for granted at our level because we have such hands-on access to our student athletes all the time, right? Their bullpens are always with us. We have trainers, we have strength coaches, we have all those things. But, one thing that I think is really easy, regardless of the level you're at, to help with injury prevention is just developing a warm-up routine, a proper warm-up to get your blood flowing, get your body moving, and prepping yourself to pitch, like warming up to pitch rather than just pitching to warm up. Sounds super simple, but like here, one thing that wasn't being done, when I got here that we implemented was a lot of bullpens, a lot of pitchers, right? You get out, you hammer your J bands, you do all this arm care stuff, and then you go and try to long toss. And it's like, well, you haven't really done anything that engages your core a ton. You haven't really done anything with your lower half. So just having some type of dynamic warm up, a few little mobility exercises, some things that get you moving around prior to going and trying to throw a ball underhand from 43 feet. I think is huge. Just being able to prep yourself to go and take care of yourself that way. And Sherry, I know you tell all your CSA customers this all the time, but really making sure that you're trying to get in as good habits as you possibly can in terms of sleep and nutrition and those types of things that you know, they affect your fatigue level, they affect your muscles, they affect so many things. So, making sure, especially travel ball when it's crazy travel and you're in and out of cars and long drives, just trying to make sure that we do our best to eat pretty decent. I'm terrible at that personally, but do your best to eat well, do your best to sleep well, and then when it's time to get going, warm your body up and figure out things you can do to be warm that's not throwing 300 pitches. I feel like, especially young pitchers, the pregame warmups are very, very long and drawn out. And a lot of times, when you get to travel ball and time limit games, you're warming up for 45 minutes to play an hour and 15-minute game. And did we really need to throw 100 pitches pregame to go and throw 50 pitches in the game? So just things to think about. Everybody's different. We have some kids that take 40, 50 minutes to get ready pregame. We've got some others that do it in 20, 30. So, like Justin said, we try to individualize everything as much as we can because there is a comfort level. And to a certain point, what you think you need is what you need, but really being reflective of, okay, what is the purpose of what I'm doing? And am I getting ready to pitch or am I just going and throwing the ball?
Justin, that's a tough act to follow there. He covered a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. There's, J bands that I think a lot of people are aware of. There's crossover symmetry that's really good. They also have a core application in their crossover symmetry set. Just doing some little bit of research on YouTube, you can find some really good scap activation stuff. My personal belief system is that as pitchers, you guys are posterior train driven athletes. Your backside should be just as strong as your front side. And I think the backside, when it comes to your scap and all those things, I think that's the main part in the, I guess, the prehab and the post throw application. Because you'll see majority of the injuries are going to come from your labrums, your bicep tendons, your rotator cuffs, those type of things. And if we keep our scap aligned, usually you can keep those things to a minimum. So things like Jaeger bands, crossover symmetry, just a lot of scap stabilization stuff is what we do a lot of. And same thing that Anthony said on the dynamic warm-up piece. I think that's a huge part in the throwing process that kind of gets taken for granted. You show up at a field and you get in the bullpen with your catcher, and you just have a routine of just having a chat, having a conversation, and it's one of those things that can get easily forgotten, and it's really a crucial piece in this process if you continue to, I guess, miss it along the way. When it comes to the nutrition side, I think it's a if you guys are investing all this time, effort, and energy to play travel ball and play it at the elite level and spend all this time, effort, and energy going to camps, the sleep aspect's going to affect a lot of things. To the amount of time you guys are on your cell phone. I mean, you can kind of go as deep as you want on that end, and you're going to retain value because it's one of those things that are going to bring value back to you. The diet, the nutrition piece, like Anthony said, when I'm on the road, it's a lot of fast food. So, I'm a pot calling the kettle black on that one. And the last piece of advice I would have for anybody listening is you guys are all different. Some of you want a male pitching coach. Some of you are going to want a female pitching coach. There's different type talkers out there that that are more teachers, and some are more doers. And I think you need to invest time, effort, and energy in going and experiencing it, because the last thing you want to do is show up on site and not be able to click with your pitching coach. I want an intimate relationship with them. I think that's a crucial piece on the pitching coach side of things. And if the due diligence, so to speak, wasn't done on both avenues, and you show up on campus, man, you don't know if you're going to click or not. So that would be my advice, is to make sure that you're asking the right questions, and make sure you feel that warm and fuzzy of, I can see myself working with this guy or this girl, etc. At the end of the day, it's your career, and you only have one, and take advantage of it.
Excellent. Love the detail. Christian?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they said everything when it comes to the, the prep and the strength and conditioning side of it. But I do think one thing that we've really focused on this year with some of our athletes is sleep, which I know that's so easy to say. It's another thing to do it. But we have seen that poor sleep has direct impacts on grip strength and broad jump for us. So I think that is something to prioritize, especially I know when you're in the car driving 6 hours to another state to go play softball for an 8 a.m. game. I know it's tough, but it is something that needs to be prioritized. And then I'd say just something moving forward for younger pitchers, just for their growth, that I'd like to see is just really invest in learning different swing paths and understanding how to call a game and understanding what hitters are trying to do, what their plans are against you. Just because I know here at Arizona, we try to make the pitch calling a little more collaborative. We're not just trying to be machines out there. And it makes it way more easier not only to call a game, but also to be able to make adjustments with the pitchers whenever they understand what the hitters are doing versus just throwing a drop ball with -8 in this one spot. So I think that's a big thing. If y'all can be challenged with that to be able to help just impact your game and level it up in that aspect as well.
I love how you guys have all covered different categories here. Margot, you get to wrap this question up.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, especially when you're just using it over and over again, if your mechanics are not in a state where you can go and do them without thinking, and you're kind of trying to like tweak everything, if you don't have that solid foundation, you're bound to like create habits, and those habits turn into maybe bad form, or maybe your legs aren't driving off hard enough, so you're trying to pull with your shoulder, and that's when kind of injuries happen a lot. It's because when you get tired, you start overcompensating. So I would just make sure that if you do get in that situation where you feel like you're pulling too much, or you're not really like having that smooth, fluid motion, to just go back to your basics and lean on your mechanics as much as possible. The other thing is to, honestly, probably the hardest thing you could ever do as a softball player in high school is take a break. Like whether it's a week, 2 weeks, whatever, that time frame between your high school season and your select ball tournament, whatever you want to say, there has to be some type of recovery mode that you need to be in, where you're not even touching a ball. Not only physically is you recovering, but mentally you can take a break and not think like, oh my gosh, I have another game. And you will come home, or you'll go back to the field hungrier, feeling better, feeling refreshed, and wanting to be there more with that break there. And I don't think enough of parents do that for their kids. And kids are like, no, I don't want a break. Well, of course you don't, because that's not the popular thing to do. But at the end of the day, you truly need that break. And with weight training in college, obviously, that's mandatory, but in high school, it's not really. So if you do have, a great weight training program at your school, take advantage of it, because the stronger your muscles are, it supports the joints, less room for injury, and you'll stay more out of the training room and more in the weight room. I think that's a really great, equation for success. And the last and final thing is just doing the little small stuff that might not be so cool in the eye of your teammate or whatever, but like the extra stretches or icing your arm down after the game, doing the little things, because your body is always going to win no matter what. Like, however strong mentally you think you are, like, your body will eventually shut down and you won't be able to hit your peak performance when you need to, because you didn't listen to your body beforehand. So I would just, be a student of your body and understand, like, hey, like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I need to do. And take that time in between to take care of yourself, because you only get one arm and you only get so many throws out of that one arm.
I love it. And you guys, Justin and Margaret, you mentioned two things that CSA does specifically for our student athletes. We actually do a 30-day yoga program in December, and it's usually just stretching and relaxing and getting, calm with your mindset and just letting your body repair. And Justin, you mentioned one of my favorite ones, which is our time management program, where we actually teach them to prioritize their time and not spend so much time on their cell phones, but use it for specific, things to help them in their game. So I thought that was interesting. And just a little plug for some of the extra things that we do here at CSA, because we're advocates, not just recruiting. And we just love being able to bring you guys these kinds of panels. I don't see any other messages, so if you're still wanting to send me a quick message on our direct message here, go ahead. But I want to just personally reach out and thank each one of these fabulous pitching coaches. You guys are amazing. Margot's not only a incredible ambassador for our sport, she's all over TikTok and the all of the social media sites, but she's also become a very good friend. So I love everything she contributes to the game, and it's just full circle here. So I thought we brought you a good variety of coaches with backgrounds, and I'm sorry that the other coach was not able to attend. And would love to hear if you can shoot me some messages of what topics you'd like to cover next week. And I take it same from the college coaches here. It's important that we continue to educate this audience of prospective student athletes and keep you guys healthy and ready for the next level. So thank you all very much. Don't forget to like us before we hang up here. If you're not following us, go ahead and follow us and share the space when it's done, because it is recorded. And that is how we grow this message out to everybody who was unable to attend. So thank you all again. Appreciate you. And we'll see you next Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time. Thank you.